Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room.
How do you like it?
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that. Here's Johnny!
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus!
Welcome to The Completionists, a podcast where three lifelong friends and aspiring movie makers discuss their first shared inspiration, Mr. Stanley Kubrick. Each episode will review Mr. Kubrick's filmography, the history, the theory, and what it means to us personally, culminating in our own endeavor to create a short film using his techniques. This is The Completionists. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Michael Cole. I'm with Pat Brennan and Wes Wennerstrom. Today we are talking about...
I'm Red Rum Redmond.
Red Rum Redmond.
That's me.
And Pat is Patrick Barry? No, I don't remember I don't remember what we just discussed.
He's Irish.
We are talking about Barry Lyndon and The Shining. So... let's start with Barry Lyndon, which
very
came out
similar
in
movies, I have to say.
Huh?
Very similar films.
Oh, extremely.
They're almost indistinguishable from each other.
Yeah. So before we fully dive in, Wes, I'm curious because you watched this movie. You watched Barry Lyndon under the influence, and this seemed like a weird choice for that. So I'm curious, how was that?
You know, it was the plan. There were probably some beers involved, but no hallucinogenic drugs, unfortunately. I have not had the bandwidth at the time. So, yes, I watched it only slightly tinged. Yes.
Honestly, as I watched this movie, thinking that you were going to be getting high for it, I was like, this doesn't feel like the movie. Like, it doesn't feel like it would be terrible, but it doesn't feel like it's going to enhance it in any way.
Yeah. Especially the second half is kind of a real bummer.
Yeah.
I think what would happen is I would be like really like, feeling like huge waves of empathy. And then just like when he has like his kid has the carriage day, when he has like the magician, and then he has those two sheep with like the pom-pom hats. Like, yeah, I probably would have just laughed a lot. I probably would have just lost it at that point. Because that shit is funny.
Yeah.
And sad when they carry his coffin.
Yes.
So
yes.
I would have had my comeuppance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That was the tough part of this movie, but so this movie is widely considered the underrated Kubrick movie. When I was reading about it and seeing people's comments and stuff, everyone kind of said this is the unsung hero of the Kubrick catalog. And with that in mind, I felt a little disappointed. I think if I hadn't been told that for so long that I just watched it with nothing, that I'd have been like, this is a really good movie. But I didn't feel like it stood out as much as the other movie. Like, since Dr. Strangelove, essentially, I think everything has been really, it not necessarily like Kubrick-esque, but like it stood out among the movies of its time, and this does not feel as much like that as the others. What do you guys think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like if it had been his only film, would it have, stuck out like this? Would people have remembered it?
Yeah.
Maybe. Who knows?
Yeah. But in a time when you also, like, you think about the 70s, you had a lot of interesting period pieces being made by, like, indie directors. And so you got, like, there's, was it McCabe and Miss Miller? And, and I know that's a different period, but there's lots of stuff where it was
drama type stuff.
Costume dramas that weren't the old school Hollywood thing, and they weren't necessarily the Lawrence of Arabia massive scale thing, but they were somewhere in this weird like costume drama with a budget kind of feel. And so this, I mean, it was very cool, and they were like knowing that it's all period correct lighting, but it just didn't pop out the same way.
I think it's a I probably felt the same way when I first saw it. Also I was in high school, so I don't know, but I think it's a film that grows on you, though. I think it's one that you it's definitely rewards multiple watches because it has little details and little moments in it that you don't even really notice as part of it. I think the thing that what struck me this time specifically was like things like the scene where he gets in he complains about his cup being greasy, and then one of the other soldiers makes fun of him, and like they get in this like kind of just like verbal fight, and then they get in the actual fight. Like it is such like a great like character moment in addition to being a like interesting scene. And then the way that it's shot changes in terms of like a lot of the film is very like static shots or slow zooms out and stuff like that, or but that's done with it's handheld, so it's just, it's like the camera is going around it, and there's a few moments in the film that do that, and I think that's kind of what separates it from. I mean, I think to your point, it's a lot of different period stuff. Like a lot of the other 70s period stuff was more like Western and that sort of thing. Where this is, or even like you could point to like The Godfather was 50 years, or was it
30 years
before, but still period piece. So like it has a very different feel to me than a lot of what was going on, and I think it was also really influenced to a lot of what came after, but in ways that I think it's stuff that isn't as popular now, like Amadeus I don't think would exist without this movie, or the Merchant Ivory stuff, or Age of Innocence, Martin Scorsese's Age of Innocence. I think they all follow from this.
Yeah.
Real quick before we get, this is just a real side note. The guy that he fights in the greasy spoon or greasy cup scene, that guy is the big guy from the first 3 Indiana Jones movies. That he's a stunt actor that played 3 different characters that Indy has to fist fight in all 3 movies. The first one he gets propeller bladed to death.
Nazi that gets
So last movie we saw Darth Vader in short shorts, and this movie we got to see that guy. So
what were your thoughts?
Yeah, you were about to say something.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this is like the beginning of it, but it seems like maybe there's a trend here that started with Kubrick of directors kind of getting to do the period piece. And like, if there's one thing I think I've learned from, I haven't even like directed my first scene yet, and man, the amount of coordination that must go into a period piece must be just fucking insane, But yeah, I mean, this movie I've seen a few times. I haven't seen it in a long time. It's definitely the Kubrick film that I'm least likely to go back and watch again. But it's a fun film. It's a picaresque, I have to explain that to the audience, but a picaresque is like somebody like getting involved in like just a series of events that takes them away from home, and eventually they kind of get back to where they started, like the Odyssey or something like that. But it's usually about a person who starts with no agency, maybe gains agency and loses it again. So there's like a push and pull there. And I just thought there were long sequences of like drudgery, but then also really long sequences of like revelry as well. And like I found myself like my emotions were just getting pulled in a lot of different directions with this film in kind of like a fun way. And then I think it's definitely a landmark in cinematography. I I think a lot of directors look back on this film and see a lot of inspiration there for how Kubrick used his camera, how he used light, how he used natural light, and the technology that he used, because he was able to adapt things to his camera that were being developed by like NASA, and he even like turned to inventors to change up his camera. So I know we were going to get into that a bit today, Mike, talking about photography, and there's a lot to unpack here with this film.
Yeah, but before we do that, I want to say, because you mentioned the coordination that it takes, and I saw a clip of Ryan O'Neal talking about they were shooting in Ireland for a bit, and they were getting a lot of trouble from Northern Ireland, the IRA, especially because there was so many British crew people. There was a lot of conflict going on, and Kubrick got threatened and was like, "We're fucking out of here," and they just stopped. And so Ryan O'Neal went off to Paris, and he's like, "I'll just hang out in Paris till they're ready," thinking that Kubrick's going to need to find locations and he's going to need to do a bunch of work to get back and going. And it was like 3 days, and he got a call from the production manager or whoever it was, being like, get the fuck back here, we're ready to go. And he's like, they had horses that they needed to do, like, you know, like there was all these things that needed to be coordinated, and they had it relocated in like 3 or 4 days, which is kind of amazing.
Yeah, I was watching one of the documentaries, and one of them said that someone on it said, like, yeah, you would talk to Stanley Kubrick and you would be like, oh yeah, 2 weeks ago at this exact time, you told me that you would have the Lady Lyndon's wig to show me at this moment. Can you show me it? Like, he would just have this, like, he had this like project manager mind of like, just could like file away everything. And it's the only way you could make a movie like this, because it was so intensely detailed and so intensely historically accurate. Like, they even used some museum quality costume, like museum legitimately from the era costumes that they borrowed from museums.
Amazing.
A lot of the research was done using paintings from that period, the 18th century Britain, and that inspired a lot of the cinematography in this. I mean, if you can point to who was the painter? I'm sorry, I got it in my notes. William Hogarth was a famous painter of the time. It inspired a lot of the shots in this, and the setups and stagings.
Yeah, and I know that they did. Did the paintings dictate the period correct lighting, or did the period correct lighting, they went, oh, we could do the painting style? This,
I think it was
which
a
came
mix
first on that. Yeah,
because he was really influenced by like for the lighting for like Caravaggio. So earlier paintings, that not necessarily of that era. I was just watching a documentary with someone from the Met talking about the influence of this. It was really interesting to see, like, the term he uses, light as a protagonist in it. And I think that, is true for Caravaggio. And I think it's also really true here, the way that I think it's true for actually all of Kubrick's movies now that I think of it. Light is such an important role in all of his films, but especially here, I think it's what dictates the entire shot of every shot in the film.
Yeah. And it's a little infuriating that with candles he's able to make it so beautiful, and I've got a professional fucking light here, and I don't look as good,
What was your camera made by NASA or no? So I watched a documentary, and I don't know what it was, but it was on YouTube about Stanley shooting this film. And what I didn't know about Stanley Kubrick is he used all of his takes, because he did a ton of takes, to set the shots. So he would watch the takes in the setting and walk around with his viewfinder, figuring out where the best way to shoot was. And that, to me, ran totally contrary to what I thought of Kubrick, was that he knew exactly what it was going to be before it happened. So that was interesting to me. And it seems like this film, he looked at the Renaissance paintings. Well, he looked at the Renaissance paintings and based some of his photography on that, but that was not the rule. So that was surprising to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When we get to The Shining in a little bit, the lighting setup that he did for pre-production and planning of it is absolutely fucking insane.
Yeah.
But we can wait till we get there.
Yeah. Wes, just to go off of what you were just saying, though, it's not just necessarily the camera shots and stuff like that they kind of improvised in that way. A lot of the script was improvised for both of these films. Was not improvised, but like written as they went. They took the novel, which the novel's supposedly very different in a lot of ways, but they kind of used it as the like a continuity piece for it. So they could just say like, okay, we had this scene yesterday, we can do this scene today. And they would just write a new scene and give it to the actors, have them rehearse it.
That's so interesting because apparently this novel is really nothing like this film. I mean, the events in it are a lot the same, but it's a different tone. It's called The Luck of Barry Lyndon, and Barry Lyndon's like a sociopath in this novel, and he's self-aggrandizing. He's more like Humbert, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't read it, but this is what I understand of it. So Kubrick really made it his own.
Yeah, it's basically a novel written to portray the Irish as liars and awful people, which, fair enough,
I will say, in this movie, I think that Ryan O'Neal is extremely charming, but I don't think he's that much better of a person than Humbert.
Mm-hmm.
To be fair, like, I don't think of him as his character's not a good person, with the exception of how he treats his son.
Yeah.
There's very little that is likable about his actions. He's charming as fuck, which I don't think Humbert could say.
Humbert's pretty charming.
Good at hiding his inner.
If you read Lolita, he's a charming motherfucker.
I did not find him. Okay, maybe in the book, but in the movie, I thought he seemed creepy from start to finish. But but yeah, no, and I think that the character is pretty shitty, but I can enjoy a shitty character, so that's not a complaint.
Mm-hmm. It takes
one
talent to be a shitty character and act a shitty character,
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And when we get into Jack Nicholson in The Shining, I think that I love, even though that's not the character in the book, I love that performance, and that's a pretty shitty character.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that, this is going to be so superficial sounding, but the one thing that didn't work for me about Barry Lyndon is Ryan O'Neal looks so American. He has that corn-fed look to him. Everyone else has some kind of weird imperfection that even Lady Lyndon, who I think is stunning and stuff, she at least had European teeth. There was something, whereas he looked so 100% American. The accent isn't thick enough to make up for the fact that he's playing not American, and I was just no, I can't take myself out of the fact that he's 100% American. That was my only complaint on that.
Interesting.
It was like Kevin Costner in literally anything. It's I feel like I heard a hint of an accent, but
or Sean Connery.
That being said, the performance is really good. I'm a Scottish Russian. My name is something Villalobos.
I'm Greek.
Yeah. So that's my one issue. I do think, but Lady Lyndon, when she came on screen, though, I was oh, this is they could not have cast a better person to look the time period and be I understand 100% why everyone would want that woman.
Yeah. I love that scene too. The all silence. It's very a silent film scene
when he seduces her.
Glancing at each other. Then they go out onto the shady patio, I should say.
Should you call it the shadio?
Yes.
The Shadio is a nightclub that
is that like a catio where it's just the cat box? It's the shadio.
Yes. But that's just such a perfect perfect scene. You know, it's just so beautifully done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I really
like
I like the narrator. The narrator's so funny in the beginning. He's like,
Yeah.
"Look, I don't know why this fucking 7-year war happened, but like, yeah, this is what happened, all right."
yeah.
And Barry,
Yeah,
he wasn't having the best luck, and so
The narrator works really well.
Mhm.
I like almost every scene with Lady Lyndon. I was like, is the scene in the carriage
Yeah, where
is
she's the smoke. Oh my god.
yeah,
Barry, could you please not smoke? And he just like blows it in her
blows in
face.
her
I'm like,
face.
what?
Ugh,
I'm like,
what an
no,
a-hole.
why are you doing this? But um
And her in the tub
apparently
with like the robe.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Yeah,
one
it's
of
just
the
such a beautiful scene.
yeah.
There's
I
just
love
like
that scene especially because it's so emblematic of like the last half of this movie where it's
yeah,
beautifully shot in these naturalistic lights, but the effect of it is she's in the middle of this room in this tub, and you can tell it's this beautiful gigantic room, but you can almost not totally see the background. Like there's all these curtains and stuff that you want to go up and look at and touch, and you can't. Like it just gives this sense of dullness that once they get to the Lyndon estate, like the movie goes from kind of adventurous and there's duels and there's gambling cons and stuff like that to this like, oh, this life is just dull and it's a loveless marriage and they hate each other. Like it's such the cinematography changes in that moment in such a way that, but it's a subtle way that it's still beautiful. It's still great. It just feels like toned down in a way that's really affecting.
Yeah.
yeah.
In back to the carriage scene for one sec. That same Ryan O'Neal interview, he mentioned that the horses clip clopping was too loud for the microphones when they were shooting, so they basically fired the horses for that scene, and they just had crew people pull the carriage around by like running around pulling the carriage.
Sounds like Kubrick. Yeah.
Which is
I mean, just watching this film, it was like being like in an art gallery.
Yes,
it's like
it
you're
was.
watching a film happen in an art gallery, and it's these beautiful Renaissance, well, not Renaissance, but like best 18th century paintings, and just like these deep colors, and you just want to sit there and just study each of them.
Yeah,
it's like you could just like run a one scene over and over again just to like kind of get the sense of how they shot it and what's going on with the actual thing that you're seeing.
Yep. Yeah. I liked the so it's I liked the use of dueling on kind of bookending the movie too. I really liked the duel scene when in the beginning, watching that scene and then and like 100% believing like, oh shit, he killed that guy, and then like what is it, 20 minutes later when he runs into the guy and he's like, no, she married that guy and he's dead. And he goes, we put a toe in there. Unless toe would mean something else that I didn't understand, but I was like,
TOW. I think toe is like a pitch or something like that.
Yeah, and he's like, nah, he was knocked out for a few hours, and
$1,500 a year.
Yeah, they're not going to give up.
There's some funny scenes in this movie when he gets robbed by the really polite people.
Right.
It's just so funny. He's like, "Can I at least have my horse?" And they're like, "Yeah, that's going to defeat the purpose, I'm afraid." Sorry.
Yeah.
So it's got its humor too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will probably rewatch this one at some point. I bought it because it was not that much more expensive to buy rather than renting. I think it was $3.99 to rent and it was $8 to buy, and I was like, I've heard this is the unsung masterpiece, so I bought it, and I could definitely see watching it again. So
Well, Mike, do you want to tell us about, because we're going to talk about photography a little bit, do you want to give us like the ins and outs of ISO and white balance and all that stuff?
Sure. So my knowledge is largely based on digital and not film, so keep that in mind, that a lot of this kind of may not have applied at the time with any of Kubrick's movies, really. But as far as like white balance, the reason why we want white balance is, I mean, largely it's so that you can color correct. So like our skin tones are the hardest part. If your skin tones are off and it's not for an effect, the viewer will be like, why are they like, it's the uncanny valley essentially. Like, if my skin tone was like bright green and it's a Star Trek, you're like, fine. But if my skin tone is just like slightly off, you think, is he sick? What is going on? And it's not always what we are color correcting for, but right now it's like one of the most important things to color correct for, because that will take people right out of it. And white balance is a good way, especially when you have multiple shots across a scene or a movie, is to make sure that you're not feeling like the color palette is changing in between shots, or the light temperature. So I will do, if you give me a second, I will do an effect, because this light has color temperature changer on it. And I just gotta find the app real quick. I know I have it on here. Small area. So like color temperature changes, like right now I'm on a fairly cool color temperature, and it probably looks fine to you guys, I would imagine. It look, whatever. But if the next shot, if this was a movie and I was like in the same room and the next shot is a different color temperature, it looks like either the time of day has changed or I'm just a sloppy cinematographer. I'm going to show you what I mean as soon as the thing loads. There we go. So you can see the color temperature kind of changing here on me a little bit. And that's we have use for this and we have use for this, but we don't want to mix and match them. So that's a big part of what white balance is white balance is finding your color temperature. So like right now I'm at 5100 Kelvin, and that's like it's a bluer style. And then you go in and you can get more of a yellow. I'm at 3300 Kelvin. I think I usually have it set around 5100 when we're recording. And then, so that's a big reason why you want white balance. And it's especially when you were back with film, I can, with digital, if we can see what we're doing and what we're getting very easily, like in shot. And if I go, oh, I can watch the shot 10 seconds later after we're done and go, oh, that didn't look right. But with film, obviously they had to be a lot more careful. And, I don't know when like they're playback started. I'm sure by the end of his career they had it. I'm sure by like the last movie or two, but I'm not sure in England and Ireland in 1974 and 5 that they had Video Village where they could see it, and that doesn't always translate to what you're getting on film, because film records differently than video. So that's the white balance side of it. What was the other question you asked? I forget. Oh, lighting.
Yeah, I think there's like ISO, aperture.
Yeah. So ISO, is your camera's, or when it was film, it was your film stock. So a higher number would allow you to get lower light, and a lower number is going to be a clearer image, but you need more light. So, like if you're at an ISO of 100 is the lowest I've ever, even when I was in photography classes with actual film in college, ISO 100. I think they make some specialty ISOs that might be below that, but I don't know what you use those for. But if you can have enough light somewhere to use 100, you're going to have a clean image that has very little. If it's film, it would be grain. If it's digital, it's noise. And if you've ever filmed on your phone in a dark setting, and it's especially the iPhones now make a whole shitload of adjustments, but all that like little digital, pixelation and shit that you would get in the dark spots, that would be from a higher ISO having noise. It's overcompensating. So like, let me see if I turn the light down all the way. I don't know that you'll be able to see noise. I don't know how I'm on my laptops, but you would get noise in this area.
Oh yeah.
And anywhere where the shadows, you're going to see a little more of the noise.
Yeah. Looks pixelated.
Yeah. And so like that's why the ISO is for the clearness of the image. And when it comes to film, people like the look of film grain to an extent. You don't want it to be too intense, and but like if you get a little bit of film grain, it gives it a texture that people like. And then even ISO 100 is going to have some of that. And with digital, that's a I before we even started recording the first episode, when we started talking about doing the short, I sent you guys a clip of our YouTube video about how to get that film grain and film look on digital. And there's all the they've been trying to recreate it for 20 years. They want all the advantage of digital with that feeling that all of us old school film fans have of wanting that feeling. And some of it is that film grain, some of it is the way that on camera light halos and I forget the word that they use. It's not halos, but I'm not talking about bokeh or lens flare, but I'm talking about like when you get that like there's like
halation, right?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, it's not like a sharp thing. It has and in Barry Lyndon, when they're outside, there is a weird mist look to a lot of those shots, which I think of a lot of movies, especially England for some reason, because the movie that it immediately made me think of was Princess Bride. There's a whole bunch of shots outside during daytime where there's this like misty feeling, and it feels very ethereal.
It's like a penumbra around things almost.
I don't know what that means.
It's like a light, just a little bit of light coming from like an object.
Yeah. It's just it feels angelic. Yeah. And that is probably honestly light, because I don't think that's. I know that in a lot of cases, cinematographers will use fog machines and things to create, especially like, let's say I had a window right here and we wanted to get like dust particles to show the light trail. You would use like a smoke, like a haze machine essentially,
and that would use a diffusion filter as well, right?
Not the same way. So like if you want diffusion's great. Like this is diffused by a umbrella diffuser, so like you're not getting all the. I mean, you can see the line here, but like you're not getting as much. It's not hard lighting; it's soft lighting. But what you want is if you can get that soft lighting, but also have like directional and keep that like feeling of like a beam of light coming through. That's where a haze machine or anything that's going to have like particulates, like we think of dust. That the reason why that's so much more prevalent in movies is because that's how they sell that feeling. Whereas we can understand that in real life, seeing a window, because the sun does differently than any lighting that we have.
Yeah, I really liked what you were saying about. I was just thinking, this is kind of a tangent, but like I was thinking about that. Kind of clicked something into my head, like the thing that I'm fine with digital filmmaking in general, like, but every time I see a movie that's shot in black and white on digital, I'm like, this looks like shit. Like there's very few films that I've seen that are shot digitally and that are black and white that I like actually think look good. And I think it is because you don't have the grain, like I think a lot of black and white films, they get like that grainy, like, and it doesn't necessarily always, it's not, sometimes it's sharp, but like you have that, and you, instead of grain, you get that stuff in the background. So it's just, it makes that makes a lot of sense to me.
I think when you're dealing with especially black and white, there's a few things that people don't take into account, which is, one is, I like the idea. I like partly when we're making our short, there's a part of me that does want to go over a lot of the stuff with those film filters to make it look like that, since we're emulating someone who only worked on film. But there's also part of me that's like, if you want film, shoot on film. Right. And so for black and white with digital, I would guess that people are shooting in color and then desaturating. And there are good ways and there are bad ways of doing that. And one is like, when you look at black and white, up until really up until the end of Kubrick's black and white era, and then really not again until maybe Schindler's List and like the post black and whites. It's grayscale. It's very grayscale, and it's not that like strong whites, strong blacks in there. And I don't want to see grayscale digital. I want to see, if you're gonna do black and white, do hard black and white. And a good way of doing that is like, there are filters. I only have a polarized filter here, but you can get a filter that's a different like color. You can get a red filter or a green filter, whatever.
Yeah.
If you're shooting for black and white and you have a red filter on, and then you have vibrant reds, they're going to come across as, I believe, I might have this backwards. They're going to come across as vibrant whites. And so that's how you can get these really stark contrasts that don't look digital, or they don't look like they were created digitally. They look like they were done in camera, in lens. And I don't think people are doing that when they're doing black and white on digital.
Yeah.
I think that they're just kind of...
one example I can think of is, I don't really love this movie, but Alfonso Cuarón's Roma is done in digital black and white. And that looks really nice. Like, I think it's, well, I have some problems with the way it's shot, but I think it looks better than what I normally shoot. And I think he used that technique of filtering and well, he's a master, so he would do it. Exactly.
He would do it right. It's but I'm sure, like, when you see somebody who's making a low budget, maybe it's their first film, and is trying to give it like, oh, this is going to be a noir, or this is going to be like, I'm going to make it look like The Following, or any of these other, like, not The Following is obviously on film because Christopher Nolan wouldn't touch digital with a stolen dick, but you know what I'm saying? Like, when they're trying to create that vibe, that Clerks, that early, and they're doing it digitally, they're probably not doing it properly.
Right.
So. All right. Do we want to go into The Shining for a little bit?
What we forgot to do last time was our one sentence reviews.
Oh yeah. Okay, we could. We
can
do
that
those
now for the last two movies.
Edit them in with different outfits on.
We could.
Okay.
So what was the first one we watched last?
2001.
2001: A Space Odyssey. Okay.
I feel like we did it the first take of.
We did it the first one, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, 2001: A Space Odyssey. Let's see. The farther into the future we go, the further into the past we go.
In space, no one can hear you scream. I still think it works better for 2001.
Really can't wait to be a space baby.
Okay. And then for A Clockwork Orange.
I think I remember mine. I think it was something like, it's sad when droogs become cops and you end up with your face in the spaghetti.
Yeah. Kubrick finds the thin line between freedom and fascism.
I want to move forward to a hypersexualized future without the fascism and without the rape.
So, sex robots?
I mean, just like the fact that there's no taboo about the sexual art, even. To give you a quick story, Logan loves this fucking story, but the first time I was in Italy, I went with my aunt and uncle and some family members, and my uncle only went because his kids were going, and he was chaperoning, essentially. And we were on one of our tours in Florence, and we get done with the tour, and she goes, do any of you have any questions? And he goes, yeah, what's with all the penises? And she goes, oh, you are so American. Like, we do not think about that. They are human beings, and every human being has either a penis or a vagina. And we just don't think about it. And he was like, it's a lot of penises. And I feel like in Kubrick's, in Clockwork Orange's future, there's not a lot of people going, there's a lot of penises. So.
Yeah. And we're going to get into this with Eyes Wide Shut, but he he's the guy who got the closest to doing like real sex on film. He's the guy who got he almost intertwined art and pornography. Like he was the closest to doing it, at least with film.
Have you seen Caligula?
I guess I have not. So
I haven't seen Caligula, but I've heard. You guys have heard the stories about Caligula, though, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
Malcolm McDowell and I'm forgetting who else was in that movie. They hired a bunch of real actors. They filmed a bunch of scenes, and like so, Malcolm McDowell goes, "There's this scene we shot where I'm looking at my falcon as it lands upon a perch, and that was what we shot." And then they edited because it was the Bob Guccione, who was like the Penthouse or Playboy or somebody, one of those magazines, publisher, but he wasn't famous yet, and he was producing. So in the final cut of it, he's looking. Malcolm McDowell went to see the movie, and he thought, here I am looking at my falcon, and he's actually just watching like a hardcore orgy scene where someone's like really pornographically getting like pounded, and he's just like, great. And he's like, I was shooting a hawk scene. So
that's a cool technique. Maybe I'll do that for my shoot on Saturday. I'll just have a
your actors will love
pornography.
It. Yeah. So yeah, all right. So do we want to do a sentence for Barry Lyndon?
Yeah.
Okay. I will let one of you go first.
I'll go. A slow zoom out on the violence at the heart of honor and societal decorum.
Nice. I love it. Walking through the gallery of one man's life.
Mm-hmm.
Even when they get ahead, the Irish can't get ahead in England.
Luck of the Irish.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I never understood that phrase was ironic until now. Yes. Okay, so big up. We lost Shelley Duvall today.
Yeah.
Day of this taping.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. That was weird. That was a little weird that she died on the day that we were planning to do this, but
apparently she has like a really prodigious filmography in the 70s with Robert Altman, and I have not seen those movies, and now I would like to.
Yeah. If you see Three Women, that her performance in that is, I think, one of the best performances by an actress or any actor in film history. Like, she is fantastic in that, and it's less remembered now, the film, than like Nashville and McCabe and Mrs. Miller, but I think it's every bit as good, and she is just fantastic in that.
Yeah, and this is The Shining. I think is probably her most famous role.
Yep.
I finished the movie after we learned that this morning, that she had died, and it. So one of the things that is notorious about this movie is that people think her performance was bad, and she was apparently nominated for like a Razzie for this, and it's not what the character is in the book, but I think the performance is very good in this.
It's a great performance. She's like the sleeper for the main character. I mean, a lot of people focus on Jack, but there's a strong play for her being the main character of this film.
Yeah.
And Steven Spielberg said something really interesting about the character, because it's been often criticized for she's more of like a strong character in the novel. Apparently, I haven't read it, Mike, you've read it, but in this, she's kind of starts off kind of like meek and weak, but his take on it was like, in doing that, you get this sense of Danny is in danger from Jack, this very strong, overbearing personality, abusive person. And there's no one that, after Halloran gets killed, there's no one that can save Danny except this woman, and you are not sure if she can, because everything you've seen from her so far is kind of like, she's just a little, like, I think the scene where she's talking to the doctor and she's just sitting there holding the cigarette, like, and you can just see, like, she's just on edge, like, she's a very nervous person. She's very, but she comes through, like, you can say maybe she didn't save him, but like, she gets him out the window, gets him to safety for, at least for a
I
time,
I don't feel like there's any point in this movie where I thought she was incapable. I think
Right.
that being scared and being scared solid, out of action is a different thing. And yeah, she is very scared and very you know actively, visibly scared. You mentioned Halloran dying.
Mm-hmm.
Halloran doesn't die in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Halloran drives them out. She's, so yes, she is a stronger character in a lot of ways in the book, but she is nearly frozen. Like, I think she gets out of the house at one point, or she's lost a bunch of blood or something. She's almost incapacitated by the end of the situation and of everything. And Halloran wraps her in a coat, and Danny helps him, and then they drive, which is actually just a regular snowmobile, not one of those like snow truck things that they have in the movie,
Mm-hmm.
down. So yes, they took away some of her no, I don't want to say agency, but her, like the strength that appeared in the first in the book, but they gave a lot of it back to her in that end. The fact that she gets him out and she does all that.
Yeah.
She's
And
resourceful. I mean, I think from the point where the staircase scene, where like when she gets the bat,
Mhm.
you're a little bit like, is she going to give him the bat? But like, then she, I mean, it's hard to say now because we've seen this. I'm sure we've all seen this a lot of times, but it's like you don't know if she's going to trust him again or something, if there's something. But she comes through and beats him and goes on,
Yeah, just dissociate and be like, all right, here's the bat. I guess I'm going to die now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that I think she doesn't get enough credit for in the performance is, so one of the things I don't care as much about the fact that it's not translated. There's some of it that's very badly translated or very different.
Yeah.
And it doesn't bother me when it works, but there's certain things where, like, if it had been translated more literally, her performance in some ways would be better, because, like, the staircase being one of those things, Jack is the entire book. Jack, Wendy and Danny are trying to figure out how to get Jack to get away from the Overlook, because they know that the Overlook is what's doing it to him. They're trying to save him the entire book. And they, like, because they love him and they know he loves them. They know that this isn't him. This is something possessing his body, essentially. There's certain ways in which the movie kind of doesn't do great. Like, it's 3 hours long. You don't have time to do everything. The fact that he's very affectionate towards both of them in the book in moments, like, he has, like, sexually affectionate with Wendy in, like, a romantic, sweet way at the beginning. He's very endearing with Danny, and the scene on the bed is the closest we get to it, and even that seems sinister. And there's some genuine sweetness with Danny, like a good amount of it, up until the point where in the book, for example, so it doesn't end in the maze the way it does in the movie. It ends with the hotel blowing up because he hasn't checked the boiler. But as they're at the final bit and they're in the building with the showdown with him, and Dick's been kind of temporarily, like, I think he was knocked unconscious, and Wendy is downstairs and can't get upstairs because the elevator is causing an issue, and Danny and Jack are up on the top floor together, and Jack is going after Danny, and Danny has spoken to Tony, who also, that's very different. Tony doesn't, like, speak to everybody. He talks about Tony to them, but and Tony is the future version of him. It's Danny, Anthony, Torrance. And so it's just a future version of him being like, this is what you need to do. I'm helping you, like him shining backwards, essentially. And so in that moment, he says, you need to tell your father that he loves you, and you need to remind him. And there's a moment where Jack, like, stops, like, his own body and says, Danny, you got to run. And, like, and so, like, there is a lot more redemption. And like I said, I don't care that it's different, but she catches so much of the flack, as the woman always does from the American audiences.
Yeah.
She catches so much of the flack for any discrepancies people think that there are, when I think that that's not really fair.
Yeah.
What you're talking about, Shelley Duvall?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and famously, he really like tortured her during this movie filming.
Yeah.
Like he made like that staircase scene you're talking about, made her do it 122 times.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And like if you watch some of the behind the scenes stuff that was shot by Kubrick's daughter, she's literally talking about like her hair falling out. She's so stressed. And Kubrick is just sitting there making fun of her. He's like, "Oh, is that right? Is your hair falling out?" Yeah. I don't think so.
There's some story. I mean, I think there's a lot of truth to it, and I don't want to discount it at all. I think she talked about in later years that like she there was also a lot of like warmth between them at times as well.
Yeah.
And they were like, and there's also footage of her, like giving it back to him and stuff like that. But I think what makes this, he was famous for shooting a lot of scenes, like scenes over and over again, obviously. And did a lot of rehearsals and then shooting a lot of takes. So like you would do a scene 127 times. And I think what makes this different is, if you're doing that on the set of Barry Lyndon, it might be difficult, it might be hard, but it's not psychologically torturous. If you're doing the staircase scene 100 times, what you're going through is you are getting yelled at by someone saying horrible things to you, 127 times. You're screaming 127 times.
Crying.
You're hitting someone with a bat who, like you're probably friends with, like a coworker, and going through that process over and over and over again in this setting it really is torturous. And I think it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know if you'd call it abuse or, like what, but I feel like it's something that we should look at as saying like, he probably shouldn't have done that in that way I think he should, it shows a lack of care for his actors in that case, where I think, probably he didn't feel personally like I think he had respect for his actors, but it didn't come through in that action,
Yeah. Back to the 127 takes too. A lot of times when you're doing multiple takes of shots, especially in some of his movies, there's a big reset time.
Yeah.
And that shot doesn't feel like it needs any reset. The cameraman might like move back down the stairs, but you're not resetting props or, there's no blood spilled or special effects practical effects that need to be reset. Like you might literally be getting 30-second breaks in between takes or a minute and a half breaks. And that's a different thing too. Like it's one thing if, I did 127 times over the course of 25 days,
right,
as opposed to I did 127 times in a day.
Right. Yeah. And another thing on that also, like, I thought it was interesting reading how he cared for the actor who played Danny in this, because that's a major concern about a child in a horror movie. Is Danny afterwards, he thought he was just in a drama. Like, he didn't know anything was, like scary in this movie. He just thought he was in a family drama. And nice. I think that's really interesting to see, like, the care he treated the child with. Obviously you're going to treat a child differently than an adult woman, but like you are but I think he could have extended that same care to the rest of the actors on set as well, because I think Scatman Crothers, there's a famous story that he went from this to and like was crying, would cry recounting working on this, and he went to this next movie was with Clint Eastwood, and Clint Eastwood famously does like 1 or 2 takes. And he just was like, oh my God, this is the greatest experience of my life, because I'm not doing those, 100 takes over and over again, getting an axe shoved in my chest.
Yeah. Scatman Crothers was amazing.
Oh yeah.
He's great in this movie.
I love the giant painting over his TV. Like, such a
the Afro Girls.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember this viral video from a few years ago? Because you were talking about Danny thinking it was a drama. Do you remember it was like Shining? It was like, he needs a novel. He
Oh,
needs
yeah.
a dad. And it was like Phil Collins.
Yeah.
Remember this?
I love when they do those like changing the genre on a trailer.
Mhm.
I actually pitched to Matthew and Adam that if we started making movies, that I would want to like just do off genre trailers and not tell like but become like let it be known like this is not a romantic comedy,
Yeah.
it's a horror movie. But and then I thought it would be funny to not only do that and then have like DVD extras where it's like, oh, here's the full cut with that version, like we recut it for that. I think that'd be hilarious to do.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
I love those when you see like anything that's like a serial killer or a
Mhm.
horror movie and they're like he's just he just needs a little bit of space to write.
To me, there are really great themes in this film about the kind of like mythical great white, the great white, like the male writer, this weird term for that. But yeah, like failure of masculinity, failure to provide is a failure of masculinity, racism, misogyny, and how white men feel entitled to art. And when they don't get it, when they can't be as recognized as they want to, it manifests as being aggressive and violent.
Mhm.
Yeah, and yeah, I think I was saying that Kubrick is just as good a storyteller as all these authors that he borrows from in his visual language and his adaptations. And I like what he did with this adaptation, where he kind of built this delightful kind of Mobius strip with what's going on with the hotel versus what's happening with Jack's masculinity.
Mhm.
I don't like that take because I really, really associated with Jack in a way that I don't. You can ask Sarah. So when I started reading the book 9 months ago, or whatever it was, I was like, oh, I was like, some of the way that Jack interacts with Danny reminds me of me. And then watching the movie today, I was like, oh, some of the way that Jack interacts with Wendy reminds me of me.
Oh,
And
same
she
here.
was like, why?
I'll be working on something and Buddy comes in and is like, hey, it's really nice out. And I just like give her
Yeah.
like death look. And I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
why do I fucking care? I'm like creating my masterpiece over here, So
Sarah will come in and be like, you've been working on this for almost 35 minutes. And I'm like, that is just barely enough time to get settled. What are you, like, you hear me typing or you don't hear me typing? Say the fuck out. And I told her that, and she just kind of had this look like, yeah. And she didn't watch it with me. And I don't think she's ever seen it before. And she was like, oh, yeah. Oh.
But Buddy walked in on me watching The Shining, and Jack was being all creepy. She's like, "That's him, huh?" And I'm like, "Yep, that's him." And she goes, "What a guy!"
I absolutely love his performance in this,
Yeah,
even
he's
though
amazing.
like he doesn't capture the nice side of Jack at all. Like that was from the book. I love like because I mean, Jack Nicholson is one of my favorite actors of all time. I literally at one point said that I was telling someone about the podcast and how we're watching The Shining, and I said if we didn't do a director next season and we did an actor, I would want to do Jack Nicholson's entire catalog. I'm not suggesting we do that, but I love Jack Nicholson. But when he's doing that, like Wendy, darling, light of my life, I'm not gonna hurt you. He didn't let me finish. I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your fucking brains in. And I was like, oh, he's so charming.
I think
fuck Humbert, but
I think what's he doesn't. I think you're right. Like he doesn't capture like the regular guy thing of that's apparently in the book. Again, I haven't read it, but what I've always liked about it is he's not really like Jack Nicholson has never been a regular guy, but like at the
about
beginning,
Schmidt.
But like at the beginning, he's like a glad hander. Like he's like you could see him showing up at a party and hanging out with this guy. Like he's not like a like it doesn't seem like he's from another planet or something like that.
No.
He's just not like a bland guy. He's a very like he just seems like a guy that you might kind of like walk away from being like that guy's kind of an asshole, but like I had a fun time hanging out with him, I guess. But and then and you see like kind of the seeds of it, what's going to happen in that. Like he's just he could be possessed by the ghost, or it could just be he's isolated and this just brought it out of him because we know he broke his kid's arm at one point or dislocated his shoulder like at one point because he drank too much and stuff like that. Like it's in there, there's something violent in there, and it does shine through. And I think that just makes it almost like a better performance than you would get with like John Voight or one of the people that Stephen King wanted them to play him. So
the line that everyone remembers obviously is "Here's Johnny," and while that one's really good, it's just pure sinister with like almost none of the charm. But like right there, the line I just mentioned about like "Darling, light of my life," and he throws those smiles in. There's that line I think is so much better, but also the when he's doing the Three Little Pigs moment. Yeah. I was like, this, like, I would allow this guy to kill me. This is worth it. Like, watching him be like, I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house in. Like, I was like, this is amazing. Like,
by the way, I tried to watch Shelley Duvall's, what is it, Fairy Tale Theater or something today. And it was one about the Three Little Pigs starring Billy Crystal and Jeff Goldblum. Yeah. It was really fucking weird. It was really odd.
Yeah. I can see that. I mean, Jeff Goldblum.
That's one of the cool things with Shelley Duvall, though. Like that stuff, like she got this kind of reputation that she kind of like dropped out of Hollywood after this, but she worked for another 14 years.
Yeah, she did.
And she did stuff like that where this didn't ruin her career. Like some people seem to think, like she went on and she like produced that whole show with some of the biggest name directors in the industry, like, and was involved in every aspect. I think that's really cool that she, like it's a different aspect of the story,
Yeah. She's an admirable person. It seemed like she was working with mental illness and made it work for herself and had a great career,
Yeah.
And it's sad the way the later years of her life went, but I think she had some, not redemption, but like some happier moments towards the end.
Like, also, fuck Dr. Phil.
Yes.
Exactly. Apparently, people loved her. She would just like sit in her car, drive around like North Texas, and like people were just like, "Yeah, there's Shelley," and she would like bring them donuts and stuff. So
So I do want to talk about the lighting because we mentioned that with Barry Lyndon. So I can't remember where, because I saw this story in the last couple of years of the way that he planned these shots. And it was that he made models of all the sets.
Whoa.
And like pretty big scale models, and then he would use lights that were like smaller versions of the exact lights he was going to use, and he would build them up. And he'd say, okay, we're going to have this in this spot. And he'd set the lights all up so he knew everything was lit perfectly how he wanted it. He would stick, figures and do photography of it and kind of get those shots and be like, this is how we're going to shoot it. And be like, okay, so you're going to be here, here, and here. The lights are there. So like the gaffers just had to come in and essentially like recreate the lighting on a bigger scale than he had. And which is kind of nuts. Like, I mean, now with digital, you could kind of do that digitally in a lot of ways, but it still would be so much fucking work to do it instead. And not to mention, you don't know, like you get on set, you want to like adjust, you want to be able, like, I think of like the gaffers being the people who are spending so much time getting the settings right and stuff. And so I thought that was an interesting piece. Also, I watched a bit of a thing today about the cinematography, and apparently he saw old footage of snowstorms during World War II, or no, not footage, photographs, and there was this like gray haze to it, like still haze, and so that's what he wanted to create, and you can see it in other movies too, where he would get a haze machine, and then if the wind was blowing in any way that made it look like that haze was like snow movement, it would, instead of just that fog look, they wouldn't shoot. They would wait till the wind stopped so that they could have that staying still. So when you think about it, like, it gives this very claustrophobic feel whenever they're
Yeah,
outside during
yeah,
the
yeah.
snowstorm.
Mhm.
They do it a little bit. When they were talking about it in the documentary, they cut to Clockwork Orange when the Droogs are coming under the bridge where the homeless guy is. There's the same fog,
Mhm.
and it was like it creates this ominous like inescapable feeling to it.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be a very influential. I feel like I think of like 80s action movies. Like I
Yeah.
think it probably started with Clockwork Orange, and this was probably very influential on that too. That's like a typical thing in like a Michael Mann movie, you know.
Yeah.
One sentence reviews.
Yeah, one sentence reviews.
I've never been so scared of a hallway.
Don't expect the book. Just go see this as its own thing. Because I loved the book. I know it's one sentence, but I love the book, but it's a different thing. And you just have to, if you can detach them, but then you can enjoy both.
Jack Torrance lost, so he has to keep America clean.
Nice. That's in the book, by the way. That line, that's not like, and I don't know if that's a reference to some show or something from the 70s, because there are other
I
spots
think
where.
it's a reference to an ad.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm still getting that tattoo.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
Yeah, I shoot this weekend. I'm excited.
Nice.
Yeah. Let's do a little bit of talking about the film update on this
Okay.
episode. Yeah.
So yeah,
Hey, Wes,
I'm shooting this weekend. I aligned my location. I've got my actors lined up. One was almost like, "Oh man, I've just been really busy recently." I was like, "No, you can't. You can't. You have to come. Sorry. Like you're gonna screw this entire thing up if you don't come. So you're coming." And they're like, "Okay, fine." But yeah, I've been experimenting with Final Cut Pro with LUTs and shooting in log, and some of the image stabilization I've been messing around with. And that stuff is cool. Like you can have a handheld camera be sitting there, kind of jiggling, and you just put like a tripod filter on that. That shit looks completely still. It's just it's amazing how things have how far things have come. So
yeah, and if you then use in editing stabilization, it's amazing. Like how the smoothness you can get. So yeah, that's that. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Did you buy Final Cut?
There's a 90-day free trial. So
cool.
I'm using that, and if I like it, I guess I'll hang on to it. I don't know.
I would recommend, and they're the same exact price, but there is a free version. I would recommend DaVinci Resolve. So I use Final Cut for like editing podcast stuff. Like, it's because I've been using Final Cut for 20 years, so I it's like, second nature at this point. But as far as like being able to control your image, especially color correction, DaVinci was designed as a color correction tool and then became an editing suite. And so I think that there's a much greater artistic potential there. I also know that there is a more robust free version than the Final Cut options, and then it's $300 to get the perpetual on either of them. So
yeah, that's what I have DaVinci Resolve, and I played around with it a little bit. I haven't really done much, but it seems really solid.
Yeah, and it's the only reason I started on it is that Black Magic is they make the DaVinci Resolve and they make my camera, and so in order for my raw files to go in, I have to use DaVinci Resolve at the beginning. But for a little while, I was like I was just like doing very basic color correction and exporting to Final Cut. But I edited I reshot some stuff this past weekend, and I sent you guys like a rough edited cut, and that was like 30 to 45 minutes of editing in Resolve. I haven't, it wasn't me really getting into the nitty gritty, which I think I could do a lot more with. Obviously, it was shot in log, but yeah. So just a suggestion on, especially you might be able to do everything you want to do for free. So
yeah, well, yeah, I'm gonna keep tooling around. I think in Final Cut, but I'll check that out too. Also, if you know any good places to get like good LUTs, let me know, because I've been like getting a lot of free ones, and I throw it on and I'm like, ooh, that looks terrible, So.
Yeah, there's a lot of LUTs that are like Instagram filters. So like for me, I use LUTs as like so I can't really show you guys right now, but so on my camera, I have LUTs pre-installed on my camera, so I'm shooting in log, and I can toggle between LUTs, and then like I'll see the LUT version, or you could toggle back and forth and go, okay, this is what it looks like in log, this is what it looks like with the LUT on, and like the LUT just kind of gives you an idea of like how things work. Um, I don't find that like LUTs are perfect on their own. I feel like color correction is always preferential, but it's up to you. I also know it's a shit, like color correction's a shit ton of work, and it's also like very specialized. So it's something I need to learn for other purposes. So that's why I've been taking that under my project as well. But yeah,
Very cool.
but if I see good ones, I'll let you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
How's yours going, Pat?
Good. I edited my script, and I've been working on like so I've been doing, taking a lot of photos and everything, and I've just been working on organizing everything into, the proper scenes and, matching it to dialogue. So so it should be, it finds holes that I need to fill, and then also, make actually putting this together go smoothly. So moving forward, and then I got to get into the audio recording space once that's all wrapped up.
Awesome.
Very cool. Nice.
So I wonder if either of you are planning on incorporating any specific Kubrick mentality into your shooting. Like, are we doing 150 takes, or what do we?
I wish. I mean, I don't have that kind of time with my people. It's like I can barely get them to show up for a half hour. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to use some of his like his 1 point perspective stuff, some of his zoom out. I'm going to try to have some interesting set stuff going on. Like for one scene inside my fake director's home, my friend has this giant eyeball mural, and I'm going to put it behind the couch, so he's kind of just sitting there on the couch, and kind of like what happened with Dick Halloran, where it zoomed out and you see the Afro lady. It's going to be this gigantic eyeball, coming out. So just trying to make it interesting to look at.
That's cool.
I am going to do the similar either zoom out or track out shot on mine. I want to reshoot. I'm talking to my actors to see if they're available this weekend to reshoot the murder scene. We don't actually see the murder, but I also they improvised a little bit of their dialogue in the first take that we did, and the camera work's really the problem there. But I also think that because the dialogue was improvised it didn't blend as well the way I want to. So I think I need to have one actor monologuing, and then the other actor is the one that interrupts, because they're going to crossfade. I'm crossfading my audio. And that was something that I didn't really realize wouldn't be clear. It just sounds like a garbled mess until we shot it. And I edited it, and I was like, oh, this doesn't come across the way I wanted it to. And luckily, I have the option to reshoot. Both my actors live like 10 to 15 minutes away or less. And hopefully it's like 5 or 6 shots. The big thing is that I stained some of their clothes with fake blood last time. So see if they have new shirts that they're willing to stain this time.
Just go down to Goodwill and get some clothes.
Yeah. I'm bigger than the one that got his shirt stained, and so I think but not that much bigger, that if you wore something that I've outgrown, like a business shirt that I've outgrown,